Having an open AJNA center in your human design means that you're here to have an open mind, to be open-minded. So the AJNA center on your human design chart represents your mind. And if it's white, that means it's open. Therefore, you have an open mind. However, a lot of people who have this center open are clinging on to their opinions and to certainty in order to sound smart. In this video, I'm going to show you how your strong opinions and beliefs might actually be blocking your innate wisdom if you have this center open. Because people who have an open AJNA center not only are here to be open-minded, but also have the potential to be the most wise, but only if they're using their mind differently from how culture has conditioned us to think. Welcome to Human Design with Anna. I have been giving one-on-one human design sessions for clients for over half a decade now, and I really do love these open centers. I see often that my clients' greatest gifts lie buried in these centers, and I say buried because our open centers show us where we can get overly influenced and pulled off track from our true selves. But in this video, I'm also going to show you the gifts of having an open AJNA center because there are many. So a quick review of what are the centers in human design. Every single person has 9 centers in their chart, and the centers are those shapes in your chart. And they could be colored in, they could be white, they could be all white, they could be all colored in. It really depends on your unique design. Now, each center, you can think of them also as energy centers because they're loosely based on the chakra system. Each center represents a certain or governs a certain aspect of our lives. So there's a center for our emotions, there's a center for our self-esteem. The AJNA center is responsible for our mental awareness, for our mental processes. Again, it's our mind, it's where we think, it's where we observe the world around us, is where we make sense of things. It's also where we formulate our opinions, answers, theories, ideas before we share them to the world. Now, about half the population has this center open. So again, that's going to be white on their chart. And the other half has it defined, and it's going to be colored in on their chart. And this video is about people who have it open, but it is helpful for everyone to know about this because, again, half the population has it open, half of it has it defined. Now, I am using open to also encompass people who have this center undefined. There is a slight difference between having the center open and undefined, but just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to say if that center is white on your chart, it's open. Our open centers show us 3 things. They show us, 1, where we are impacted and more influenced by the world around us and the people around us. So it shows us the areas in life that we're more sensitive. You could also use the word empathic. Number 2, it shows us where our energy is inconsistent. And number 3, it shows us where we have the potential to be the most wise. So let's start with point number 2. What does it mean to be inconsistent in the way that you think? That definitely sounds negative. But what it really means is that you are a flexible thinker, that your mind is meant to be fluid if you have an open AJNA center. So the best use of your mind is to be curious rather than certain. This could also look like maybe one day you think about things logically and another day you think about things abstractly. It's really good to know if you have a child who has an open AJNA center so you're not forcing them to, think logically all their time or think this way. Often people who have a defined mind, again, that's going to be colored in on their chart, they apply the same mental process to everything. But if you have an open AJNA center, you're definitely meant to be more fluid in the way that you think. You can be quite intellectually gifted when you have an open AJNA center if you use your mind as a place of curiosity rather than certainty. Albert Einstein is a really good example of somebody who used his mind this way. he had an open Ajna center, and he was able to hold multiple different concepts and theories at the same time and look at them from different perspectives. So at the time, he saw a contradiction in two different predominant theories. One, the theory of electromagnetism, this man named James Clerk Maxwell came up with, and then Newtonian physics in terms of explaining objects in motion and the speed of light. So for him to come up with his special theory of relativity, if you remember E equals mc squared, that's a special theory of relativity, he was able to hold these two contradictory views and then synthesize them and come up with his groundbreaking theory. Einstein is famous for his childlike curiosity, and he used this thought process that he called combinatory play to come up with some of his groundbreaking theories, such as space-time, which really altered the way that we think about the universe. I really love this quote by Albert Einstein: "The measure of intelligence is the ability to change." So had he glommed on to the current way of thinking of, Newton's right or Maxwell's right, he would have never been able to come up with his own groundbreaking theories. So for people who have an open Ajna center, you really want to allow your mind to be flexible, to really let yourself change your mind and change your mind again. We currently live in a culture of opinions. However, if you have an open Ajna center, you are not designed to have strong opinions. But again, opinions are, I would say, equated with intelligence, right? Smart people are paid to write opinion pieces, and we read them. And these opinions often convey certainty and conviction, and people are more likely to follow somebody who has certainty and conviction. Instead of following someone who says, "I don't know," we might feel like somebody who says, "I know," knows more. Moreover, being open-minded, right, the ability to see things from many different perspectives, I believe the word nuance was trending in 2020 for this, can come across as morally questionable in this day and age. However, if you have an open Ajna center, again, you're really not designed to be certain, to have strong beliefs, to be rigid in your thinking. This actually can pull you away from your true self and into what we call not self behaviors in human design. So I'm going to give you a list of not self behaviors for you to keep an eye out for if you have the open Ajna center. Not only will these behaviors pull you away from your true self, but it might actually be blocking you from actualizing your purpose. Like, imagine if Albert Einstein had really glommed on to the current thinking of his time, we would not know who he was. So here's some not self behaviors to look out for if you have an open Ajna center. Being rigid or black and white in your thinking. Feeling pressure to be certain or to have the answers, confusing certainty with intelligence, trying to prove your intelligence, being defensive when your ideas are challenged, over-identifying with other people's opinions, mistaking other people's opinions and ideas as your own, thinking about things that don't matter. If you have an open Ajna center, you automatically have an open head center, and this can make you a little bit scatterbrained and have your thoughts be all over the place. Constantly trying to figure out your life, using your mind to try to figure out your life rather than following your authority or your strategy in human design. And lastly, you might find with an open Ajna center that you are often ruminating over past events, having a lot of regrets, questioning decisions that you made in the past. Circling back to point number one about having an open center. So our open centers show us where we're more influenced and impacted by the world around us. So having an open Ajna center means that you're more influenced by other people's thoughts and ideas and opinions. I like to joke that people with an open Ajna centers are much more susceptible to conspiracy theories. I know that for me, I have an open Ajna center, and if you put any documentary in front of me about aliens or this being an inside job. By the end of the documentary, I believe it. There's a human design expert out there who recommends that people with the open Ajna center empty out at night, really reduce the amount of stimuli coming in, write all that information on your phone so that you can get back to that open-minded state where you're not glomming on or attaching to this idea and this idea as my own. Another thing to watch out for is you might be more susceptible to other people's advice for them telling you what you should do with your life. It's helpful to know who in your life has a defined Ajna center. Again, that's going to be colored in on their chart because you might be more vulnerable to their ideas about you. One nice thing though about being around somebody who has a defined Ajna center is that it can help you be more focused. However, when you're making a decision for your life, it's really good to step out of their aura and consult your authority. So your authority is your decision-making process in human design, and nobody, whether they have a defined Ajna center or undefined Ajna center, is meant to make decisions from their mind. This is where human design really goes against our mind-oriented culture. If you are really making decisions from your authority and not your mind, that can also reduce a lot of the mental anxiety that people with an open Ajna center can experience around regrets and rumination. Because if you're making more correct decisions for yourself and not making them out of reactions or because somebody else thought you should do this thing, you will have a lot less regret and rumination. Okay, let's circle now to point number 3 of having an open center. That this is where you have the potential to be the most wise. And if you are the most wise in the way that you think, that means you have a potential to be a genius, like Albert Einstein. A lot of very creative thinkers of our time and times past have an open Ajna center. Freud's a good example. A contemporary example would be Elon Musk. So here are the gifts of having an open Ajna center. Again, you have the potential to be the most wise in the way that you think. Being open-minded, being able to see things from different perspectives. Also being able to see layers of issues that other people might not be able to see. And I think this is a very helpful thing to have right now in this very polarized world that we live in. Another gift, and this doesn't sound like a gift, but it is the ability to ask questions rather than to provide answers or try to sound certain. Einstein, another way that he talked about how he came up with his great ideas is that he always sought for the right question. He wasn't seeking for answers. Again, you can be a really creative thinker when you have an open Ajna center. You can also sense what other people are thinking. This is called telepathy, which has gained a little bit of traction and more scientific inquiry thanks to the podcast, The Telepathy Tapes. If you're interested in telepathy, I highly recommend that podcast. Another gift is that you can show people a new way of doing things. That's a really nice gift to have. And you also can really discern which concepts have value and which don't, or which people might have answers and who doesn't. With the open Ajna center, one of the most intellectually honest things you can say is, I don't know. It can actually be quite freeing to not have strong opinions in this culture that we live in that really wants you to take a stand for something. That can actually lead to fundamentalism, fanaticism. Fanatics are very convicted in their beliefs. I even see this in the human design space, which is kind of silly, but there's this polarization between what's called pop human design and source human design. And if you don't know about it, source human design refers to how Ra Uru Hu, who's the originator of human design, originally shared human design. And then pop human design is the later iterations of human design that have come about maybe in the last 10, 5 years is popularized on Instagram and the internet. So I used to share that there are 5 types in human design, which is more related to pop human design, let's say. And I've changed my mind about that, and now I share that there's 4 types. So manifesting generators are a variation of the generator type instead of being separated off into their own separate type. So this is more akin to source human design. I use the word traditional human design. However, I have an open AJNA center, so I don't grip onto either side tightly, and I give myself permission to change my mind. I'm just a both and kind of girl instead of an either or. And I've also really learned over the years to say I don't know in sessions with clients when I don't know something. For me as a projector, I am a guide, and I guide best by asking questions instead of providing answers, even though people are coming to me for my human design knowledge. Really, I see my job as asking the right questions. Remember, Einstein was all about finding the right questions to lead people to their inner truths. All right, that wraps up my video on the Open AJNA Center. I hope it gave you a lot to think about. Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, take good care. Bye.